This week, a pilot YOLOs 2 faction titans into a fight for the hell of it. 3 more titans die in random ways. The Brave Keepstar in the old capital system in Catch is under new ownership. A full-on fight between RERMPI and FI.RE kicks off in Tenerifis. Exodus fight off a wormhole eviction by Inner Hell, and I have other random stuff to report on. Hello pod people, I'm Frost and this is your weekly EVE Online update. Welcome back. So as always, we start off by announcing the winners of the prize draw for the Scope Syndication skins. I have lots of winners to announce this week, 4 winners in fact, 2 from the 31st of August episode, which finally came through, and then 2 from last week's episode on the 7th of September. So 31st of August, we have Raf Daklaw and Low Hires who won the Abaddon skins. And then the Tempest Scope Syndication skins for the 7th of September. My winners were Zarch Aldane and Bipan Nock. So congratulations to all my pilots. And as always, we'll be doing another prize draw later on in the show, and I'll give you details on how to enter that. Right, so let's jump into the news and everything. So first thing I need to do is Irmalin. I messed that up so much last week, so I need to make some corrections there. I was saying that Irmalin was in 1 jump range of T5ZI, and that is completely not the case. I don't know what happened, complete blonde moment. So anyway, this is the score. Irmalin, in fact, let me just jump up into my box. We've got the EVE map in front of us, make sure my pen is working. So T5ZI, as you remember, was the staging system of Pappy, or ex-Pappy now. And then Carnage was where the Irmalin Keepstar was that got destroyed. Now, in order for capitals to get from T5ZI to Carnage, there was actually a midpoint, which was usually 1 tax smeb in Delve. And then for supers actually had to go the long way around and actually had to do about 4 or 5 jumps through from T5ZI to YZ9 to 8QT, and then from another 2 jumps in Quirius, finally into Carnage. I think the reason why it felt like 1 jump for me was because when I took out my supers, it was kind of the first point, our first stop-off point, but I forgot about all the jumps. So anyway, the main thing is I wanted to make a correction there that I completely messed that up, and I own up to it. But yeah, so Irmalin was down. It was still a big deal because it was kind of the first low-sec system and kind of safe space for anything that was exiting out of Delve or Quirius that was ex-Pappy. So let's move on to the big news. So the big news took place in Metropolis, right here. And I'm just going to bring up the killmails straight away. I think that's the easiest way of doing this. So it happened in Turner in Metropolis. And the big news here is clearly the losses. So let me do that again. There we go. So we had 1.752 028682911, or 1.7 trillion ISK lost, primarily to 2 ships that were destroyed. There was a Moloch and a Vanquisher, so both of these are faction titans. Now, this is the way it all played out. So on one side of the conflict, we primarily had an Athanor hull timer, which was being defended by Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad Esports, and it was being attacked by Local is Primary. Now, Local is Primary brought some Navy Apocs, and I think Lord of Worlds Alliance came along with some Jackdaws as well. And then Hidden Leaf brought some Long Range Ravens and some Armor Max with Apostle support to defend the Athanor. Then what happened was that basically things started to escalate. And so Local is Primary dropped some Dreads. Hidden Leaf then dropped some Dreads and a few supers. You can see the supers right here. There we go. And then what happened was dock workers were kind of on the bat phone for Local is Primary, and then they dropped loads of Dreads in response and to trap all of these supers. And then one of the pilots from Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad Esports decided to take his 2 faction titans and drop them into the fight as well. Now, I actually have a video of this somewhere. There we go. So let me just get that running. So at the moment, it's running at about 9 seconds into the video. Once we get actually to 23 seconds, right about this spot here, you will suddenly see a couple of ships appear. Right now, we're going to see a Vanquisher. There we go. They popped up. So we got the Moloch and the Vanquisher arrived on grid. So the Moloch was actually trapped on grid and then decimated. The Vanquisher managed to actually warp off to the sun. But unfortunately, he would then try to then warp away once he got to the sun, but got caught on the sun, and then the Vanquisher died as well. Now, a little bit of backstory here is, let me just pause that and go back to the kill mails for these two faction titans. I actually know the pilot. The pilot actually was the person that got me into FCing after I kind of sort of stood up there, sort of did my bit for a couple of home defense fleets. I kind of came up and started calling targets, etc. when the FCs died. He then convinced me to join the FC team, and it really affected my my experience in the game as a consequence. But I knew him at that time that he would drop supers on everything. Zavok's Torval will show up in interceptors, drop supers. A few Merlins come into the systems, local systems, drop supers. So he's always been very, very keen to just undock his shiny stuff and take it into a fight. And as we saw here, this is exactly what he did on this particular evening. Now you can see this is the Moloch, plenty of purple on it as well, so you'll be glad to hear that. On this one, always the big purple one is the damage control. So on this one, the damage control did drop for a total of 42 billion just for that one mod. And I think the total drop on that was 61 billion, which is pretty hefty. And then on the Vanquisher, unfortunately, the damage control didn't drop on this one. That would have been another 38 billion just for that mod. But it was still a 49 billion drop on that for the looters. So there you go. So that was the story there. Not your typical kind of situation, but you have to say, big balls to the pilot for deciding to take in his faction titans and undock them and actually throw them into a fight. Not only a fight that's ongoing, but a fight with like dreads on grid already and people shooting at each other in all directions. Now, believe it or not, this wasn't the only two titans to die this week. There are actually some others that died. It's been quite a week for the loss of titans. And in fact, we had in every shore, and actually in Metropolis still, we had an Erebus that died. Now this Erebus, as you can see, had a pretty unusual fit, had no rigs, was hull tanked, as you can see here, and then basically just loads of cap boosters, a cap recharges, a cap booster, and loads of smart bombs. I'm not quite sure what the smart bombs would have done. I'm pretty certain you can't use smart bombs in, you can use lots of smart bombs in low sec, sorry, it's bubbles you can't use in low sec. So the main thing was it was in Kenora. Now the reason why this was probably fitted in this way is it was right next door to Oderbine, and he in fact jumped this Titan through the gate from Oderbine into Kenora, as you can see is 12 kilometers from the gate. So he the pilot most likely bought this from somebody in asset safety, and then decided to try and jump it out and couldn't get a fitting, just grabbed whatever he could to get it out, and then got caught on the gate as he jumped through the gate, probably to be able to jump to somewhere else. Then in every shore, which is over here in Galanti space, right in the system of Maya, which is right in the middle here, another Titan was destroyed. This time it was a Leviathan. I don't even know if I've got the kill mail here. There we go. So there's a Leviathan. Once again, this looks like it was just a pure fit of buying from someone in asset safety, I assume once again. Difficult to say where this would have been going because Maya can actually reach 6 different regions. If we go back to our universe map, if I remember correctly, here we go. I think you can reach Essence, Every Shore, Synclaison, Bleaklands, Devoid, Hematar, Metropolis. I think those are all the systems that you can jump to, regions you can jump to from Maya. So I don't know whether he was coming or going, but either way, once again, this was another Titan that got caught with very, very, very little in terms of fittings on it, just kind of trying to get it somewhere. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go north and we're going to go up to Vino because we're actually going to talk about some actual other fights now. Now in Vino, I want to point out a fight here. Now this was happened over an Athanor that was anchoring that belonged to Caladrius Alliance. Now Caladrius Alliance are actually part of Winter Coalition. They're a Japanese alliance, so you can see them right here. And the main reason why I brought this up is it's in kind of NPC space, Vino being, is Vino, I think. I always get them mixed up. Yeah, Vino's NPC space. But the main thing here was that I wanted to point out that we had Solaris Shalonium, or Slice, and Northern Coalition come to support Fraternity, or Winter Coalition to be exact. Winter Coalition being Fraternity, Caladrius Alliance, Blades of Grass, Lords of Worlds. I've literally triggered, and no visual, I think. I don't know about no Commonwealth. I'm not sure about those guys, so I'm sure someone will correct me on that. And they were fighting Greater Trash Coalition. So we had Greater Trash Coalition on here, and then it looks like Goonswarm came to help Greater Trash Coalition. Yeah, so the main thing I wanted to point out here is that we talked about a couple of weeks ago about the blue donut being reset. And in fact, really what we're seeing, and we'll see this later on as well, the blue donut hasn't really reset. It's more a case of, oh yeah, we'll do a little bit of whaling, and we'll do a little bit of you know, taking out each other's fun fleets and stuff. But when it actually comes to serious business of, you know, structures and SOV, then it looks like the blue donut is quite happy to kind of link back together and work together. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, we're going to go over to Geminate next. So I talked quite a bit about Geminate last week, and we talked about how Tissue were pushed out, Darkshide were pushed out, as well as Tissue being psychotic tendencies. I then talked about Fraternity being in these systems. I actually spoke to somebody from, I've forgotten their name now, Arcos Core Alliance. Now, Arcos Core Alliance are a very small alliance, and they did actually hold SOV in BTAC F1MI for a little while until Fraternity took it. And what I understand is happening is that Fraternity have actually put in some industrial structures here. So they've got a Tatara and a Satio that are now anchored in these systems within this constellation. If we had that, there we go, there's the constellation. So it looks like Fraternity intend on keeping this, but they have given access to Brave to the structures. So maybe this is, you know, I am taking a complete guess here. Maybe they wanted to have some kind of industry capabilities in Geminate to maybe sell to Brave or to produce stuff for Brave, or maybe for themselves. They can already get very easily into high-sec from Veil of the Silence, so I'm not quite sure why they would need industrial stuff here, but wanted to bring it to your attention, and we'll have to see what that is all about. Now, I have a little bit of Fun Fleet to report on in Geminate as well. This involved, there we go, Recon, so Reckless Contingency, and Brave Collective. So at first this was kind of a bit weird, because it was like, there's not many ships on this Brave killmail on the left-hand side, but yet we had like almost a 7 billion loss. And on the right-hand side, obviously Recon Rat and a bunch of Thrashers, so like cheap ships, just really good for fun fleets. And what it came down to was there's this Stormbringer from Marok. So you don't often see a Stormbringer, so this is why I wanted to bring it up. So Marok, the pilot, was flying a Stormbringer, which is worth about 3 billion. With, I think, Nirvana, which are the high-grade Nirvanas, which are the shield implants, which are also worth about 3 billion. So it made for a total of a 6 billion loss, but it was simply a case of this Brave pilot wanted to have some fun, the same way that the pilot did in Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad Esports. I did that off memory. This is how many times I've had to say their name now. Yeah, they did it for the fun of it. The Thrashers were only able to defeat the Stormbringer because the Stormbringer ended up at 0, and the Thrashers had newts on them, and they were able to newt out the Stormbringer before it killed them all, and they were able to kill it. But lots of chats went on afterwards between the groups, and apparently the Stormbringer learned his lesson in speaking with Recon, and has now fitted a cat battery and a capacitor booster to the Stormbringer, and apparently has another one and has already undocked it literally just a few hours later. So hopefully we'll see another fight like this come up. But I wanted to really point this out just to show that people out there are happy to like undock some blingy stuff and generate some content, and everyone gets some good fun from it as well. Okay, so yeah, it's a good show there from Marok with his Stormbringer. Okay, then what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about Rorquals quickly as well. So if you remember last week, I talked a lot about Rorquals dying, and it was, you know, that we're kind of seeing the whaling come back. And I think the previous week we saw about 27 to 30 Rorquals die. And it's been the same this week, so lots of Rorquals going down. So it's very much good content at the moment. The biggest losses were down here. There was a group of, I think, was it 6? Yeah, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five Rorquals died in the space of a few minutes, all on the same grid by the looks of it, belonging to Bot. Bot being the Renter Coalition of Northern Coalition Dot, or NC Dot. So basically Rorquals have been dying all over the place. A couple of interesting ones though here. I think a little bit down here. There we go. It looks like Get Off My Lawn had a couple of Rorquals in a wormhole and couldn't find anyone to sell them to, and decided to just undock them and destroy them for the insurance. So there's a couple of those that died, as you can see just down here. And but apart from that, just kind of standard Rorqual deaths. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to Outer Passage. So in Outer Passage, if you remember, this is now test territory, and they had a lot of Rorquals picked off last week. This week, something completely different happened. So let me see if I can find the kill mail. Is this the right one? Yes, here we go. So this happened in a system of 40-ZRI. So we had a whaling situation again. A bunch of Rorquals got trapped, and you can see the Rorquals all here. And a fleet was called in to save the Rorquals. Now, something unusual happened here, and that a bunch of supers were jumped in, and some dreads and some carriers, and a Ragnarok jumped in as well. Now, this Ragnarok unfortunately had a really bad bump, and as a consequence of this bump, just got bumped right away from the Apostle and from any kind of reps, and Dread Bomb and Goon Swarm, and I think the Initiative were probably there as well. Were they there this time? No, Deep Water Hooligans were there. Oh, there we go, the Initiative, there we go. So your typical kind of Kikimora whaling fleet from all the different groups happened to be there, and they managed to get on the Ragnarok kill. At first it was kind of stated the Ragnarok kind of jumped instead of bridged. I don't think that was the case. I never got full confirmation on that, so it could have been either. The main thing is it was more a case of that it came in and had a bad bump and ended up far away from everything else and was just taken out as a consequence. So there you go. So that was our 3 other Titans that died this week. So yeah, lots of different ways for a Titan to die, and I think we saw a few of them this week. Then, where are we going to go to next? Okay, so next we're going to go over to Catch. So in Catch, what I wanted to talk about, I think I mentioned this last week. I can't even find Catch now. There we go. So we talked about this last week, how a Satia was scooped, I think it was last week or the week before, a Satia was scooped a Brave Satia was scooped as the Keepstar was being reinforced in GETAC 8JV. GETAC 8JV being the old capital system of Brave when they were based in Catch. Now, they still had a Keepstar here. Now, what has happened to this Keepstar is it's actually changed hands. And I need to find it. Here we go. So sorry for the white background there. But if I just get this video running, you can see here there is a B at the top of the Keepstar. So you can see that this has basically been changed to a Goon Swarm Keepstar, and they have removed the clone service. So any clones that were in there have now been destroyed. But the big question here is actually what is going to happen to the Keepstar now? There's kind of sort of 3 scenarios. The first scenario is that they could potentially sell it on to Against All Authorities, who are in purple here, and who are originally kind of Stain Wagon, and they've always lived in either Stain or in Catch. And whilst they're not part of the Imperium, they've always kind of had a close alliance to the Imperium. So they may sell it on. That is a possibility. The other possibility is they may turn it into a Keepstar that remains to Goon Swarm, but Access All Authorities? Against All Authorities, there we go. Sorry, a little mind blank there. Against All Authorities, give them access and rights to use it. Although personally, if I was AAA, I wouldn't want to do that because, suddenly you can see they could just turn off the clone service and then you lose your amulets if you're using it to store your super cap. Or they could just decide to unanchor it. All kinds of things could happen. And then the third option is they could basically turn it into a loot pinata. So if you remember, about a month ago in Y2 Anno in Fountain, I talked about how the Initiative bought a Fortizar from Phoenix Uprising. Yeah, I'm trying to so many names in my head. Fed Up. There we go. Federation Uprising. Yeah. Either way, Fed Up. Yeah. So they bought it from Fed Up. Fed Up originally got it from Horde. Horde got it from a group that left Goon Swarm. And so they bought it from them, and then they shot it, and then because it was in an abandoned state, everything dropped out of it. So will they do the same with GE-TAC AJV Keepstar? Will they just leave it to run out of fuel and then shoot their own Keepstar in order to see what drops out of it? It is a Keepstar, so you could get Titans and super carriers dropping out of it. So yeah, we'll have to see over the next week or two. I would imagine that's when they would do it, as to whether that's actually going to be the case or whether they decide to keep it as a forward staging post in case, for whatever reason, they decide to need to deploy to catch. All right, so that is all the news with regards to that. Now we're going to come on to RERMPI versus FI.RE, but before we do that, we're going to do our giveaway. So once again, the giveaway is the Tempest Scope Syndication skin. That's the one for this month. It does really look cool on the Tempest. As always, the way you enter the prize draw, I have 2 skins to give away, is you need to make up a sentence in the YouTube comments below with a keyword. Now, the keyword this week is because. And I think we're going to use the word because the pilot from Hidden Leaf Village Ninja Assassin Squad Esports basically dropped in his faction Titans because he could. So because, find a sentence with the word because, and you're in the prize draw. The cutoff date is 1800 UTC on Friday, the 17th of September, 2021. So good luck with that. And now we will go back to our regular programming. And we are going to go on to the battle that took place in T2-V8F. So let me go back to Tenerifis. And the fight took place here. So, as you can see, this system is not held by XIX, and as a consequence of that, there was a RERMPI there, and it was the only one, and this RERMPI belonged to XIX, and it allowed them to basically stage out of there. Now, if this was destroyed, then because of the ADMs, the only other structures that could ever be put back there would be an Asbel or a Fortizar or bigger. And so it was kind of important that Wrecking Crew or RERMPI as a whole considered that important that it should go and be destroyed. Now, as a consequence of this, FI.RE Coalition decided to form up as well. Now, we have a battle report here, and this is a pretty long one. So I also have a video to show you to link, but let's go to the battle report. So as you can see, a good fight, but very evenly matched on both sides in terms of numbers. As you can see, the losses were pretty significant. The losses were 2 times higher on the FI.RE side, and as I'll see when we talk about it, you'll understand why that came to be. But the main thing I wanted to point out here as well is that we have proper RERMPI here. So we have Wrecking Crew. So I'm going to try and show these. So Wrecking Crew is a Dread Bomb, Rogue Consortium, and Purple Helmeted Warriors. So that's the RE of RERMPI. Then we had Red Menace Coalition, let's take a different color, who are here in Red Alliance. And then I don't have another color, so we're gonna have to go back to pink. And then we had PIBC, which is the PI in RERMPI, which is Army of Mango, Vindictive, and Evictus. And then on top of that, we had Show Up the Initiative. They showed up at the end, so they weren't really involved in this. And we also had Siege Green. And so Siege Green came along with Wrecking Crew, as I recall. And then on the other side, we've got our kind of Pappy sort of reforming reunion going on here, because we had Legion of Death or Fire. So we're going to do Legion of Death first, which is Synergy of Steel, Unreal Alliance, Razor, Valkyrie, Black Rose, and then Dragon Dynasty is kind of one of those that's kind of Fire, but maybe not. They are affiliates, but they're not. It's not very clear. So that was all of Fire. And then we had Fraternity show up, and then we had Test show up. So yeah, that was kind of very much the kind of the Pappy reunion going on there. So interesting kind of setup. Now, let me try and tell you what everybody brought. So, Wrecking Crew brought Cerberuses, PIBC brought Cerberuses and some Healers Geelers, RMC brought Tornadoes, Siege Green also brought Cerbs. Then on the other side, Fire Coalition brought Macarials with fact support and some carriers a little bit later on. Fraternity brought some Harpies and Test brought some Unins. So what happened? Well, RERMPI, so that's all of the people on the left, so that's Wrecking Crew, Redman ISK Coalition and PIBC were already on grid. Now Fire Coalition were late and apparently Fire Coalition had some issues. The downtime caused them some issues because the downtime was really late that day. It was at 1500 UTC, which was much later than usual. The FC pilot as well had some real life issues and was late. And so as a consequence of that, basically Fire arrived late with their Macarials. But they did arrive and they started to engage the Wrecking Crew Cerbs on the grid. Now, PIBC went to the gate to engage the Fraternity Harpies. As we know, PIBC and Winter Coalition, or Fraternity in particular, so Army of Mango and Fraternity are long-term rivals from back in the days of the Chinese server. And so they were quite happy to fight it out, and that happened on the gate. So the Harpies were held back as they had to engage the PIBC forces. So Test then arrived in a bunch of Munins, and then Fire dropped some carriers on the Raituru, or near the Raituru, I can't remember exactly where, to help and support the Macarials. So the Cerbs are continuing to shoot the structure and are getting quite successful. They're also managing to take out the occasional Macarial as well. And then the Fraternity Harpies managed to get through the gate and disengage from the PIBC forces and managed to get on grid. Now the Harpies then start to manage to pin down the Cerbs. And the Cerbs start getting into a bit of a pickle, and I think it was Sido that was the FC, got caught, but managed to walk the Cerbs out, but then he died. So the Cerbs had to extract, reorganize, but they managed to return with still 10 minutes left on the timer. Now by this time, kind of the fight had already progressed a fair bit, and the Fraternity Harpies were kind of much less effective due to a whole bunch of losses. So eventually the Raituru dies, and now the carriers are in a position, these carriers on the right-hand side here, if I can find them, here we go. So all the ones that are here, let me get my pen. So you can see there's a bunch of Thanatoses there. They're in a bit of a situation because now they don't have anything to tether on if they want to disengage. So the main focus is on getting these carriers out. So the Macarials start focusing, from Fire Coalition, start focusing on clearing all the bubbles. They do that and manage to get the carriers out. But at the same time, Wrecking Crew drops some long-range dreads, like 4 or 5 of them if I'm correct. Now, this is where the big mistake happened. At this point, the battle report was about even, but the Cap FC of Fire was insistent that he wanted to counter drop, and so he did. And so the Subcap FC from Fire got a Sino over to the long-range dreads of Wrecking Crew, dropped the Sino, and Fire Coalition counter-dropped. And then at that point, Wrecking Crew then counter-dropped with twice the number of dreads, and then bubbled the Fire dreads, and then it turned into carnage. So at that point, the Macarials had to fly in and try and clear all the bubbles for the dreads. They started to be able to clear the bubbles, but the dreads were still in siege and dying quickly. The Macarials themselves got caught in the bubbles. The Macarials, as this fight had now been going on for over 2 hours, had run out of cap boosters. So they were running out of caps, so they were getting caught in the bubbles as well, and then it became a complete rout. Right at that time as well, the Initiative showed up late to the party with a whole bunch of carriers, and Fire had no choice but to just disengage in any way they could, and it became a rout. So a couple of things there. Also, the Fire Coalition FC told me it was the first time he was fielding Max, so it was kind of very new to him, and he admits he made some mistakes, but he learned a lot from it. I think both sides were just happy to have a nice big fight with some good numbers, and hopefully this is the first of many, and we'll see this this whole conflict between RERMPI and Fire kind of maybe pick up pace a little bit more, and maybe we'll see other groups getting involved. such as Goon Swarm, maybe Pam Fan. We'll have to see, and maybe see if the numbers grow even further. So that's about it. So the other thing as well, so let me, just before I go away from this, so I have a video here. Once again, I will link it in the description below. And it's a 15-minute video of the fight that shows you kind of what's going on from the RERMPI perspective. And the thing I wanted to point out here was that this, this video was actually shot by Rorqual. So if you're not familiar, Rorqual have been around since the very early days of EVE. If you've read Empires of EVE, they're in those opening chapters as one of the very first corporations to be in EVE Online. So they have a lot of history, and they've actually posted on their YouTube channel a whole bunch of videos from back to the days of Band of Brothers. So you may want to check that out, and I will link that in the description below. Okay, then about a month or two ago, if you remember, Literally Triggered had a couple of capitals stolen by Constantine, who went out in a Hecate all on his own and stole 2 capitals from some unfueled poses that he destroyed in his Hecate solo. Well, Literally Triggered got their own back, and they managed to steal a Mgla and another cap and a Thanatos from poses. Now, they didn't belong to Fire Coalition, but they were in Tenerifis, and they belonged to a corp. Well, one corp was Vietnam Dot, which is a holding corp for Vietnam Alliance, who I don't know who they're affiliated with. And then one of the corps was in Vietnam Dot and then joined the Dragon Dynasty, who owned the other pos. So I don't know whether that happened when they were in Dragon Dynasty or when they were in Vietnam Dot. But either way, Literally Triggered managed to get a couple of capitals back by stealing back themselves. So there you go. So stealing happens on both sides. There you go. Now, last thing I need to finish off with the whole FI.RE RERMPI thing was last week I made a mistake, so another correction. I couldn't remember who RLH and STA were associated to. Well, they are both definitely associated to FI Coalition. They are renters of FI Coalition, so they are FI affiliates. And so that's with whom they are associated. So I just wanted to correct that. Okay, so then actually there is something else that is kind of a sideline that I need to report on as well. So this may seem like really random. So we're going to HiSec now. And we're actually talking about Militaires Sans Frontières. So Militaires Sans Frontières were a corporation that was in Warped Intentions. Now, they then left Warped Intentions, because if you remember, Warped Intentions collapsed and a whole bunch of them went to Brave. But they started a war, a HiSec war, with the Rogue Consortium. Now, the Rogue Consortium then got Deep Space Alliance to join in with them. So, obviously, in this situation, they had quite a good haul here. They managed to catch an obelisk in HiSec with 23 billion of cargo, or 22 billion if you don't include the hull. So that was a pretty good hit for them. Now, why would this war deck happen in the first place? Well, what is actually quite interesting is that Militaires Sans Frontières are now associated to Fire Coalition. And if we actually look at another fight, now this fight happened over an Athanor that belonged to Militaires Sans Frontières in low-sec. But the thing I want to point out here is that if you actually scroll down, you can see that we start seeing names. Oh, wrong button, there we go. Black Rose. So Black Rose are actually members of Fire Coalition. If we go further down, I think we'll even see a couple of other names as well. I can't even find them now. But there was APOC Now, I think we're in there, and a couple of others. Cosmic Accord is another FI.RE affiliate. And so basically what we're seeing here is Rogue Consortium and Deep Space Alliance are part of Wrecking Crew, and Militaires Sans Frontières are associated to FI Coalition. So essentially what's happening is that FI Coalition have a HiSec group that are managing to hit kind of the logistical side of the Wrecking Crew, which is part of RERMPI. So there's kind of a HiSec conflict going on there as well in terms of trying to affect, their trade routes and stuff like that. So interesting to point that out as another kind of a little connection that's going on there. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention as well was with Fountain. I talked about Dark Side of the Eclipse having folded into Fountain. I then found out that Dark Side of the Eclipse did live in Outer Ring, kind of this whole region here. And they've always been on very good relationships with the Initiative, but the Initiative had interest in these systems, and because the Imperium does not do renters, they didn't want to be in conflict within it. And so what Dark Side of the Eclipse decided to do is all their pilots joined into one corp, and that corp then joined the Initiative. So that's kind of that just completes that story of what was going on there. Now, next we're going to go on to some Wormhole stuff. Now I don't usually cover Wormhole stuff, but I'm going to give it a go and see how I do. So this battle report took place in the Wormhole of J133632. Now, if I don't get anything right, and there's some Wormhole people that want to talk to me and correct me, I am on the Praise Bob Discord, so just find me in the list and you can DM me directly. But the thing I wanted to point out here was that we have a group called Exodus, who are very much a well-established group in Wormhole space. And it appears that Inner Hell and Time Crit were trying to evict them from their Wormhole. Now, Exodus haven't had the best numbers in recent days, apparently, and so they were kind of in a weak spot, and they were under attack from Inner Hell and Time Crit. But the thing that was interesting here was that a group called Mgla came along and who are very active and came to the rescue. Now, the thing I wanted to point out here was actually something that I learned that I wasn't aware of, because this happened when I was away from the game, that there is now a mod you can put on heavy dictors. Let me go to the other screen, that's a better one. That you can put onto heavy dictors right here, called a 0-point mass entangler. And what this does is drop the mass of your ship. And so this enables the heavy dictor to actually fit through a frigate-sized wormhole. Now, frigate-sized wormholes are very, very difficult to close. And so it makes them, it means that even if potentially, the enemy has got good hull control, they're controlling the grids on the incoming wormholes, you can potentially sneak a fleet of these through a frigate wormhole and get on grid to engage in the fight. And so in this case, they're able to push back, as you see, very successfully Inner Hell and Time Crit. Now, this then progressed further, but before we come on to that, I just also want to point out that MGLA also have a very, very active YouTube channel. They have some really well-produced videos that you're welcome to check out. I will link it in the channel before, so if you want to see stuff about Wormhole fights, then I would highly recommend watching these videos. A lot going on, a lot of multi-boxing going on as well and stuff like that. But it should give you a very good idea of what Wormhole life is like. So there you go, so that's MGLA dot, and I've talked about their channel. So what happened then is that Exodus, being so well established, were actually able to call in a lot of friends, and I think this is a good indication of Wormhole life. So you can see that Exodus here is there with 10 pilots, but they're able to call people from all corners, as you can see from the number of people. Now, all of these people then showed up in a praxis. So the praxis became kind of the doctrine ship for this fight, and there were a few Serbs as well, but the main thing was a whole bunch of praxis. And so they were able to bring sufficient numbers to eventually take out all 3 Astra houses and the POS that were in the Wormhole, which were being used to try and evict Exodus. And so they're able to take those out uncontested. So there you go. Now, as I understand, evictions are kind of sort of frowned upon in Wormhole life, but they do still happen, especially if you're in a position where you are very weak. So this is the case here. This happened in the Wormhole of J153919. And Andy Say is a corp with only 8 pilots or 8 members in it. And therefore it was basically in a very weak position. They didn't have the ability to call for help and didn't have the friend network that we just saw with Exodus, and wholesale operations were able to come in and wipe out the Fortizar. So there you go. So a little bit of an introduction to wormholes on my part. Hopefully I didn't mess it up too badly. And like I said, I'm really interested in obtaining some good connections with some people in the wormhole groups. So do please feel free to get in touch with me through my Discord or through Praise Bob. Now, the last thing I want to finish on, 2 last things. First thing is I want you to be aware that if you enjoyed the Alliance Tournament feeder rounds, that right now, every Saturday, the EVNT TV Twitch channel is doing practice sessions every Saturday, which is allowing people to practice for the Alliance tournaments, also allowing groups that were in the feeders that were knocked out to come back and have some more fights and enjoy themselves a little bit. So do go and check that out. We're seeing some interesting doctrines. This particular one we literally triggered was like a triple Varga doctrine, which just did some insane amount of damage. So that one's worth a watch for definitely. And some good fights were had. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And once again, I'll link that in the description below. Then the next thing is I've got some news. I'm not going to be here next week. I'm actually going to be away from the 17th of September to the 26th or 25th. So I may not also be able to do an episode the week after. So maybe definitely 1 week, maybe 2, depending on how much news I can catch up on in a day. Just to let you know that's the case. But next Monday, I do have a really good Alliance spotlight for you. I spoke to Starfleet Commander of WeForm Volta. We had a really good chat. So I think that's one definitely worth a watch. So sorry, next Tuesday. So that will be out. So do check that out. And so try not to burn New Eden to ashes while I'm away, please, so that I got something to report on when I get back. And I wish you all the best. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. And I will see you in 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll have to see how it goes. All right, bye.